Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to never miss our captivating stories of love, power, and redemption. The rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of the penthouse office, each drop echoing like distant gunshots in the silence. Vince Romano stood motionless behind his mahogany desk, his steel-gray eyes scanning the city lights below. At 34, he commanded respect through fear, his name whispered in the darkest corners of Chicago like a prayer or a curse. "Boss, the Torino family is asking for a meeting," Marcus, his right-hand man, announced from the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. Vince didn't turn around. "Tell them I don't negotiate with dead men walking." The Romano Empire had been built on 3 unbreakable rules: trust no one completely, show no mercy to enemies, and never let emotions cloud judgment. Love was a luxury Vincent Romano couldn't afford, a weakness that had destroyed lesser men before him. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister Elena. "The charity gala is tomorrow night. Please come. It would mean everything to me." Vincent's jaw tightened. Elena was the only person who could make him feel something resembling guilt. She ran a foundation for underprivileged children, completely removed from the family business, living in a world of hope that Vincent had long forgotten existed. "Marcus, prepare the car. We're going to the Riverside Community Center." "Boss, that's not exactly our territory." "I didn't ask for your opinion." 20 minutes later, Vincent's black Bentley pulled up outside a modest brick building. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see warm light spilling from the center's main hall. Elena had mentioned she was organizing some event for the kids, but Vincent had barely listened. As he stepped out of the car, adjusting his Italian suit jacket, he noticed a young woman struggling with boxes near the entrance. She was petite, with chestnut hair that caught the streetlight, wearing a simple blue dress that somehow made her stand out more than any designer gown he'd ever seen. "Careful with those," she called out to a volunteer, her voice soft but firm. "The art supplies are fragile." Vincent found himself walking toward the entrance, his usual commanding presence somehow muted by the gentle chaos of volunteers preparing for what appeared to be an art exhibition. "Excuse me," the woman said, looking up at him with the most striking green eyes he'd ever seen. "Are you here for the children's art show?" For a moment, Vincent Romano, a man who had stared down federal judges and rival crime bosses without flinching, found himself speechless. "I'm looking for Elena Romano," he managed. Her face lit up with recognition, but not the kind he was used to. There was no fear, no calculation, just genuine warmth. "Oh, you must be Vincent. Elena talks about you all the time. I'm Isabella Chen, the art teacher here." She extended her hand, and when he shook it, he noticed how soft her skin was, how her grip was gentle but confident. "She's inside setting up the main display. The children have been working on this for months." Isabella's smile was radiant, completely unguarded. "Would you like me to show you around first? The kids' work is really extraordinary." Vincent had planned to make a brief appearance, write a check, and leave. But something about Isabella's enthusiasm, the way she spoke about the children with such genuine care, made him nod. As they walked through the exhibition, Isabella explained each piece with the passion of someone who truly believed in what she was doing. Vincent found himself studying her profile as she spoke, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about a particularly creative piece, how she unconsciously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. "This one is by Tommy," she said, stopping in front of a painting of a city skyline. "He's 8 and wants to be an architect. He says he wants to build homes where families can be happy and safe." Something twisted in Vincent's chest. When was the last time he'd thought about happiness? About safety that didn't come from fear? "And this," Isabella continued, moving to a sculpture made from recycled materials, "is Maria's vision of hope. She says it's what hope looks like when it's strong enough to grow anywhere." "You really believe in this," Vincent said, his voice quieter than usual. Isabella turned to face him fully, and for a moment, the noise of the preparation around them seemed to fade. "I believe everyone deserves a chance to create something beautiful," she said simply. "Even in the darkest places, there's always potential for light." Their eyes met, and Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. "Vincent!" Elena's voice broke the moment as she rushed over, embracing her brother warmly. "You came! Isabella, I see you've met my stubborn brother." "He's been very interested in the children's work," Isabella said, her cheeks slightly flushed. Elena raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. Vincent Romano wasn't known for his interest in art or children. "Well, the show starts in an hour," Elena said. "Vincent, you should stay. The kids would love to meet you." Before Vincent could object, a small boy with paint-stained fingers tugged on Isabella's dress. "Miss Isabella, is this the man you said might help us get new easels?" Vincent looked down at the child, then at Isabella, who looked mortified. "Tommy, I never said—" "It's fine," Vincent interrupted, surprising himself. "What kind of easels do you need?" As Isabella began explaining their needs, Vincent found himself making mental notes. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to see that smile on her face again. The evening progressed in a way Vincent had never experienced. He watched children proudly show their artwork to parents, saw Isabella patiently help a shy girl, explain her painting to visitors, and felt something foreign stirring in his chest. When a group of teenagers performed a spoken word piece about overcoming adversity, Vincent caught Isabella wiping away tears. "They're so brave," she whispered to him. "Some of these kids have been through things that would break adults, but they still believe in beauty, in hope." Vincent studied her profile in the dim light. "And you? What do you believe in?" Isabella turned to him, her green eyes serious. "I believe that everyone has the capacity for good, no matter where they come from or what they've done. I believe in second chances, in the power of kindness to change lives." Her words hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had looked at him and seen potential for good? As the evening wound down, Vincent found himself reluctant to leave. He helped Isabella pack up supplies, their hands occasionally brushing as they worked. Each touch sent an unfamiliar warmth through him. "Thank you for staying," Isabella said as they finished. "It meant a lot to the kids, and to Elena. And to you?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Isabella's cheeks flushed pink. "Yes," she said softly. "To me, too." Vincent's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Marcus, reminding him of the real world waiting outside these walls. The world of violence, power, and cold calculation. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "Of course. I'm sure you're very busy." As Vincent walked toward the door, he turned back one last time. Isabella was helping an elderly volunteer with her coat, her movements graceful and kind. She looked up and caught him watching, offering a small wave that made his chest tighten. Outside, Marcus was waiting by the car, his expression concerned. "Boss, we've got problems. The Torinos made a move on the south side. 3 of our guys are in the hospital." Vincent slid into the back seat, his mind immediately shifting back to the harsh realities of his world. But as they drove through the rain-soaked streets, he couldn't shake the image of Isabella's smile, or the way she'd looked at him like he was just a man, not a monster. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent Romano found himself questioning the walls he'd built around his heart. And that terrified him more than any rival family ever could. 3 days had passed since the art show, but Vincent couldn't shake Isabella from his thoughts. He'd tried to focus on business. The Torino situation required his full attention, but her voice kept echoing in his mind. "I believe everyone has the capacity for good." "Boss, you're not listening," Marcus said, frustration evident in his voice. Vincent snapped back to the present. They were in his private office, discussing security measures for their legitimate businesses. The Romano family had spent decades building a network of restaurants, construction companies, and real estate ventures that served as both income sources and fronts for their less legal activities. The Torinos hit our construction site on 5th Street, Marcus continued. They're sending a message. Then we send one back, Vincent replied automatically, but his heart wasn't in it. His phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen. Vincent, I need a favor, his sister said without preamble. The community center's van broke down and we have a field trip planned for tomorrow. Could you possibly— I'll send a car. Actually, I was hoping you might come with us. The kids have been asking about you since the art show. Vincent's grip tightened on the phone. Elena, I don't think— Please, Vincent. Just this once. Isabella mentioned you seemed interested in Tommy's architecture dreams. We're taking them to see the new downtown development. The mention of Isabella's name made his decision for him. Fine. One afternoon. The next day, Vincent found himself in the unusual position of riding in a rented school bus filled with excited children. He'd left his usual entourage behind, bringing only Marcus, who looked deeply uncomfortable surrounded by 8-year-olds. Isabella sat across the aisle from him, wearing a simple green sweater that brought out her eyes and jeans that somehow looked elegant on her petite frame. She was helping a little girl named Sophie with a word search puzzle, her patience infinite. Mr. Vincent? Tommy called from a few seats back. Miss Isabella says you know about buildings. Is that true? Vincent glanced at Isabella, who gave him an encouraging smile. I know some things about construction. Do you think I could really be an architect someday? The hope in the boy's voice was almost painful to hear. Vincent had forgotten what it felt like to dream of something beyond survival and power. If you work hard and don't give up, Vincent said, surprising himself with his sincerity. You can be anything you want. Isabella's smile widened, and Vincent felt that now familiar warmth in his chest. When they reached the downtown development, Vincent found himself naturally taking the lead, explaining the construction process to the fascinated children. Isabella walked beside him, occasionally asking questions that showed she was genuinely interested in his answers. How do you know so much about this? She asked quietly as the children explored a model of the finished building. Vincent hesitated. His construction companies were legitimate, but they were also how he laundered money and maintained control over certain territories. Family business, he said finally. Your family must be very successful. If only she knew. We do well enough. Isabella studied his face with those perceptive green eyes. There's something sad about the way you say that. Before Vincent could respond, Tommy ran up to them, his face glowing with excitement. Mr. Vincent, the man over there said you own this whole building. Is that true? Vincent's blood ran cold. He looked over to see one of the site supervisors, a man who knew exactly who Vincent Romano was and what his family did. Tommy, why don't you go look at the blueprints with Miss Elena? Isabella suggested gently, sensing the tension. When the boy had run off, Isabella turned back to Vincent. You own this? It's complicated. Most things are. Her voice was soft, non-judgmental. But the way you talked to Tommy, the way you explained everything to the children, that wasn't complicated. That was just kind. Vincent felt exposed under her gaze, as if she could see through all his carefully constructed defenses. Their moment was interrupted by Marcus approaching with a grim expression. Boss? We need to go, now. Vincent's jaw tightened. What is it? The Torinos. They're making a move on the restaurant on Michigan Avenue. Our people are outnumbered. Isabella watched the exchange with growing concern. She might not understand the specifics, but she could sense the danger in Marcus's tone. See the way Vincent's entire demeanor shifted. Elena, Vincent called to his sister. Take the kids back to the center, now. Vincent, what's wrong? Just do it. His voice carried an authority that made everyone within earshot stop what they were doing. As Elena began gathering the children, Isabella approached Vincent. Is everything all right? Vincent looked at her, this gentle, caring woman who saw good in everyone and felt the weight of his two worlds colliding. You should go with Elena, he said. His voice colder than he intended, Vincent, go. Isabella, please. The hurt in her eyes was like a knife to his chest, but Vincent forced himself to turn away. He couldn't drag her into his world. She deserved better than the darkness that followed him everywhere. As the bus pulled away, Vincent caught a glimpse of Isabella looking back at him through the rear window, confusion and concern written across her face. Boss, we really need to move, Marcus urged. Vincent climbed into his car, his mind already shifting to the violence that awaited him. But as they sped through the city streets, he couldn't shake the image of Isabella's hurt expression. The restaurant was in chaos when they arrived. Windows were shattered, and Vincent could see his men taking cover behind overturned tables. The Torinos had come in force, and they weren't just sending a message, they were declaring war. Vincent moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating his men, making split-second decisions that would determine who lived and who died. This was his world, brutal, unforgiving, where weakness meant death. But even as he fought to protect his empire, part of his mind remained with Isabella, wondering if she would ever look at him the same way again if she knew what he was capable of. The battle was over within an hour. The Torinos retreated, but not before leaving 3 of Vincent's men wounded and his restaurant destroyed. As Vincent surveyed the damage, his phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen. Vincent, Isabella is asking about you. She's worried. What should I tell her? Vincent closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his choices. Tell her I'm fine. And Elena? Don't bring her around anymore. It's not safe. Vincent, what are you talking about? Just do it, Elena. Keep her away from me. As he hung up, Vincent made a decision that felt like tearing out his own heart. Isabella Chen was light and hope and everything good in the world. And he was darkness incarnate. For her own safety, he would have to stay away from her, no matter how much it destroyed him. But Vincent Romano had underestimated the determination of a woman who believed in second chances and the power of love to conquer even the darkest hearts. 2 weeks had passed since the incident at the construction site, and Isabella couldn't stop thinking about Vincent Romano. Elena had been evasive about her brother's sudden absence, offering only vague explanations about business commitments and family obligations, but Isabella wasn't easily deterred. She'd seen something in Vincent's eyes that night at the art show, a loneliness that mirrored her own, a hunger for connection that he tried desperately to hide. The way he'd spoken to the children, the genuine interest he'd shown in their dreams, told her more about his character than any reputation could. She'd done some research, of course. Vincent Romano's name appeared in business journals as a successful entrepreneur, but there were gaps in the information, shadows that suggested his empire extended beyond legitimate enterprises. Isabella wasn't naive. She'd grown up in Chicago, knew the rumors that swirled around certain families. But she also believed in looking beyond the surface, in finding the good that existed in everyone. That's why she found herself standing outside Romano's, Vincent's flagship restaurant in Little Italy, on a rainy Thursday evening. The building was under renovation, scaffolding covering the front facade, but she could see warm light spilling from the windows. "Can I help you, miss?" A large man in an expensive suit approached her, his tone polite but wary. "I'm looking for Vincent Romano. I'm Isabella Chen. I work with his sister Elena at the community center." The man's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Romano isn't seeing visitors today, Miss Chen. Perhaps you could call Tony. It's all right." Vincent's voice cut through the evening air like a blade. He emerged from the restaurant's entrance and Isabella's breath caught. He looked tired, older somehow, with dark circles under his steel-gray eyes and tension lines around his mouth. Isabella. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse combined. "What are you doing here?" "You disappeared," she said simply, stepping closer despite the warning in his posture. "Elena said you were busy, but I was worried." Vincent's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be here." "Why? Because it's dangerous?" Isabella's green eyes flashed with determination. "Or because you're afraid of what I might see?" For a moment they stood in the rain, studying each other. Vincent in his perfectly tailored black suit, Every inch the powerful businessman and Isabella in her simple coat and boots, looking small but unafraid. Both, Vincent admitted quietly. Isabella stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and floral that reminded him of spring mornings. I'm not afraid of you, Vincent. You should be. But I'm not. She reached out, her fingers barely brushing his hand. And I don't think you're as dangerous as you want people to believe. Vincent pulled his hand away as if her touch burned him. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me. Help me understand. Before Vincent could respond, Marcus appeared at his side, his expression urgent. Boss, we've got company. 3 black SUVs heading this way fast. Vincent's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The man who had been struggling with his emotions disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating leader who had built an empire through fear and violence. Get her out of here, he ordered Marcus, his voice deadly calm. Vincent, what's happening? Isabella asked, confusion and fear creeping into her voice. Tony, take Miss Chen through the back exit. Now. I'm not leaving without you, Isabella said firmly. Vincent grabbed her shoulders, his grip gentle despite the urgency in his voice. Isabella, listen to me. Some very dangerous people are coming, and if they see you with me, you'll become a target. Please, for once in your life, don't argue. The sound of screeching tires filled the air as 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the restaurant. Men in dark clothing began emerging from the vehicles, and Isabella could see the glint of metal in their hands. Go, Vincent said, pushing her toward Tony. Go now. As Tony led her toward the back of the restaurant, Isabella looked over her shoulder to see Vincent pulling a gun from inside his jacket. The sight should have terrified her, should have confirmed every warning she'd ignored. Instead, all she felt was fear for his safety. The next few minutes were a blur of shouting, gunfire, and chaos. Tony kept her pressed against the wall in the restaurant's back office, his large body shielding her from whatever was happening in the main dining room. Is he going to be okay? Isabella whispered, her hands shaking. Tony's expression was grim. Mr. Romano can take care of himself, miss. He's been doing it for a long time. When the shooting stopped, the silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Isabella could hear sirens in the distance growing closer. Vincent appeared in the doorway, his suit jacket torn and a cut on his cheek, but otherwise unharmed. His eyes immediately found Isabella, and she saw relief flood his features. Are you hurt? He asked, crossing to her in 2 quick strides. I'm fine. Are you... She reached up to touch the cut on his face, but he caught her wrist. The police will be here soon, he said, his voice back to that cold, controlled tone. Tony will take you home. You were never here tonight, Vincent. You were never here, Isabella. His gray eyes were hard, unyielding. Do you understand me? Isabella stared at him, seeing the walls slamming back into place, the distance he was creating between them. But she also saw something else, fear. Not of the men who had just tried to kill him, but of her reaction to what she'd witnessed. I understand, she said quietly. As Tony led her to a back exit, Isabella turned one last time. Vincent was standing in the doorway, watching her leave, and the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. Later that night, safe in her small apartment, Isabella sat by her window looking out at the city lights. The news was reporting a gang-related shooting at Romano's restaurant, with no casualties and no arrests. The reporter mentioned that the restaurant was owned by prominent businessman Vincent Romano, but provided no other details. Isabella's phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen. Isabella, thank God you're all right. Vincent called me, told me what happened. Are you okay? I'm fine, Elena. But your brother is stubborn and thinks he's protecting everyone by pushing them away, Elena finished. Isabella, I need you to know something about Vincent. His business isn't entirely legitimate, but he's not the monster people think he is either. Isabella closed her eyes. I know, do you? Because he's convinced himself that he's too dangerous for anyone to love, that he doesn't deserve happiness. But I've seen the way he looks at you, Isabella. I've never seen him look at anyone like that. It doesn't matter how he looks at me if he won't let me in. Then don't let him push you away, Elena said firmly. Vincent has spent his whole life believing he has to carry everything alone. Maybe it's time someone showed him he doesn't have to. After Elena hung up, Isabella sat in the darkness, thinking about the man who had risked his life to protect her, who had looked at her with such longing and such fear. She thought about the way he'd spoken to the children, the genuine interest he'd shown in their dreams, the gentleness in his touch even in the midst of danger. Vincent Romano might be a dangerous man, but Isabella Chen had never backed down from a challenge, and she was beginning to realize that saving Vincent from his own darkness might be the most important fight of her life. The question was, would he let her try? Vincent hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Isabella's face, the fear in her green eyes when the shooting started, the way she'd reached out to touch his wounded cheek, the quiet understanding in her voice when she'd said she wasn't afraid of him. He'd thrown himself into work, using the Torino attack as an excuse to tighten security and expand his territory. But even as he made decisions that would affect the lives of hundreds of people, part of his mind remained with Isabella. "Boss, you need to eat something," Marcus said, setting a plate of food on Vincent's desk. "And maybe get some sleep." Vincent didn't look up from the reports he was reviewing. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. And neither is Miss Chen." That got Vincent's attention. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing dangerously. "What do you mean?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Elena called. "Said Miss Chen hasn't been herself since the other night. She's been asking questions, trying to understand what happened." Vincent's jaw tightened. "She needs to forget what she saw and move on with her life." "Maybe. Or maybe she's exactly what you need." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus had been with Vincent for 15 years, had seen him build his empire from nothing, had watched him become harder and more isolated with each passing year. He'd never seen his boss show interest in a woman the way he had with Isabella Chen. "I don't need anything," Vincent said coldly. "Everyone needs something, boss. Even you." Before Vincent could respond, his phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen, and he answered with growing irritation. "What is it, Elena?" "Vincent, I need you to come to the community center, now." "I'm busy. Isabella collapsed during her art class today. She's in the hospital." The phone slipped from Vincent's suddenly nerveless fingers. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Elena's words echoed in his mind. Isabella, hospital, collapsed. "Boss?" Marcus was at his side instantly, concern written across his features. Vincent was already reaching for his jacket. "Get the car, now!" The drive to Chicago General Hospital passed in a blur. Vincent's mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Had the Torinos found out about her connection to him? Had someone hurt her because of what she'd witnessed? Elena was waiting in the hospital lobby, her face pale with worry. "What happened?" Vincent demanded without preamble. "The doctors think it's exhaustion and stress," Elena said, leading him toward the elevators. "She's been working double shifts at the community center and her regular teaching job, barely sleeping." "But Vincent, I think seeing you in danger the other night affected her more than she let on." Vincent's chest tightened with guilt. This was his fault. His world, his violence, had touched her life and made her sick. "Room 314, Elena said as they reached the 3rd floor. "Vincent, she's been asking for you." Vincent stopped walking. "She what?" "She's been asking for you. Even in her delirium, she kept saying your name." Vincent felt something crack inside his chest. He'd spent 3 days convincing himself that Isabella was better off without him, that she would forget about him and move on. But she'd been asking for him. He found her room and stood in the doorway, his breath catching at the sight of her. Isabella looked so small in the hospital bed, her chestnut hair spread across the white pillow, her face pale but peaceful in sleep. An IV drip was attached to her arm, and monitors beeped softly around her. Vincent approached the bed slowly, as if she might disappear if he moved too quickly. Up close, he could see the dark circles under her eyes, the stress lines that hadn't been there before. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "This is all my fault. Isabella's eyes fluttered open at the sound of his voice. For a moment, she looked confused, as if she couldn't quite believe he was there. Vincent? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I'm here. He reached out instinctively, then stopped, his hand hovering over hers. Isabella saw his hesitation and slowly moved her hand to cover his. You came, Elena called. She said you were sick. Isabella's lips curved in a weak smile. I'm okay. Just tired. Vincent studied her face, seeing the exhaustion that went deeper than physical fatigue. The doctors said you collapsed. I've been working too much, not sleeping enough. She paused, her green eyes searching his face. I've been worried about you. The simple admission hit Vincent like a physical blow. Isabella? I know what you're going to say, she interrupted, her grip on his hand tightening slightly. That I should forget about you, that you're dangerous, that I'm better off without you. But Vincent, I can't just turn off my feelings. Vincent closed his eyes, fighting against the hope that was blooming in his chest. You don't understand what my life is like. What I've done. Then tell me. Vincent opened his eyes to find Isabella watching him with that same unwavering gaze that had captivated him from the first moment they met. I've killed people, Isabella. I've destroyed lives, broken families. I'm not a good man. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite her physical weakness. Do you remember what you said to Tommy about becoming an architect? Vincent frowned, confused by the apparent change of subject. What? You told him that if he worked hard and didn't give up, he could be anything he wanted. You gave that little boy hope, Vincent. You made him believe in his dreams. That's different, is it? Because the man who spoke to Tommy with such kindness, who stayed at the art show because he genuinely cared about those children, who risked his life to protect me, that's the real you. The rest is just armor you've built to survive. Vincent stared at her, feeling exposed and vulnerable in a way he hadn't experienced since childhood. You don't know what you're asking for. I'm not asking for anything except honesty. I'm not asking you to change your whole life overnight. I'm just asking you to let me in. Before Vincent could respond, a doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. Miss Chen, how are you feeling? Better, Isabella said, though she didn't release Vincent's hand. When can I go home? We'd like to keep you overnight for observation, but if your vitals remain stable, you should be able to leave tomorrow morning. However, I want to stress the importance of rest and stress management. Your body is telling you to slow down. After the doctor left, Vincent and Isabella sat in comfortable silence. Vincent found himself studying her face, memorizing every detail, the way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheeks, the small scar above her left eyebrow, the gentle curve of her lips. Vincent, Isabella said softly, I need you to know something. Whatever you've done in the past, whatever your business involves, it doesn't change how I feel about you. Vincent's throat tightened. How can you say that? You don't even know the worst of it. Because I see who you are when you think no one is watching. I see the way you look at Elena with such love and protectiveness. I see how you responded to those children, how you made Tommy believe in himself. I see the man who stayed with me tonight even though it probably goes against every instinct you have. Vincent brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. You're going to be the death of me, Isabella Chen. Isabella smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her since she'd been in the hospital. Or maybe I'll be the life of you. As the evening wore on, Vincent found himself opening up in ways he never had before. He told Isabella about his childhood, about taking over the family business when his father was killed, about the choices he'd made to protect Elena and build his empire. He didn't spare himself, didn't try to justify his actions, but Isabella listened without judgment, her hand never leaving his. I'm not asking you to approve of what I've done, Vincent said as visiting hours drew to a close. But I need you to understand that my world is dangerous. Being with me puts you at risk. Isabella squeezed his hand. Then we'll have to be careful. But Vincent, I'm not walking away. Not unless you tell me you don't want me in your life. Vincent looked into her eyes, seeing the determination there, the love she wasn't quite ready to voice but that shone clearly in her gaze. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent Romano allowed himself to hope. "I want you in my life," he admitted quietly. "More than I've ever wanted anything." Isabella's smile was radiant. "Then that's all that matters." As Vincent finally left the hospital that night, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: peace. Isabella Chen had seen the worst of him and hadn't run. She'd looked into his darkness and found light. But Vincent's world was about to test their newfound connection in ways neither of them could imagine. 3 weeks had passed since Isabella's hospitalization, and Vincent found himself living a double life more complex than any he'd ever managed. By day, he ran his empire with the same ruthless efficiency that had made him the most feared man in Chicago. By night, he courted Isabella Chen with a gentleness that surprised them both. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully. Vincent insisted on taking every precaution to keep Isabella safe. She was never to be seen publicly with him. Their meetings were always in secure locations, and she was under constant, invisible protection. Isabella chafed against the restrictions but understood their necessity. Tonight, they were in Vincent's private penthouse, a space few people had ever seen. Isabella was curled up on his couch, grading art projects from her students, while Vincent worked on legitimate business reports at his desk. The domestic scene felt surreal to a man who had never imagined such peace was possible. "Tommy's getting better with perspective," Isabella said, holding up a drawing. "Look at this building he designed. He remembered what you taught him about structural support." Vincent looked up from his papers, a smile tugging at his lips. Over the past weeks, Isabella had kept him updated on all the children from the community center, and he found himself genuinely invested in their progress. "He's got natural talent," Vincent said, moving to sit beside her on the couch. "With the right training, he could really become an architect." Isabella leaned against his shoulder, and Vincent felt that familiar warmth spread through his chest. "You could help with that training, you know. You could teach him about construction, about building design." "Isabella, I know. It's complicated." She tilted her head to look at him. "But maybe someday it won't have to be." Vincent wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "Maybe someday." They were interrupted by the sound of Vincent's secure phone ringing. Only a handful of people had that number, and they only used it for emergencies. "Romano," Vincent answered, his voice immediately shifting to business mode. "Boss, we've got a problem." Marcus's voice was tight with tension. "The Torinos have Elena." The world stopped. Vincent's blood turned to ice, and Isabella felt him go rigid beside her. "What do you mean they have Elena?" Vincent's voice was deadly calm, but Isabella could see the fury building in his eyes. "She was leaving the community center tonight. They grabbed her in the parking lot. Left this behind." Marcus's voice was grim. "It's a message, boss. They want to meet." Vincent was already moving, his mind shifting into the cold, calculating mode that had kept him alive for so many years. "Where and when?" "Tomorrow night. The old warehouse district. They want you to come alone." "Like hell I'm going alone." "Boss, they said if you bring anyone, they'll kill her." Vincent closed his eyes, his hand clenching into a fist. The Torinos had finally found his weakness, his family, and now they were using it against him. "Vincent, what's happening?" Isabella asked, fear creeping into her voice. Vincent looked at her, seeing the concern in her green eyes, and felt his heart break. He'd brought this danger into her life, and now it was threatening to destroy everything he cared about. "They have Elena," he said simply. Isabella's face went pale. "Oh my God, who has Elena?" "A rival family. They want to use her to get to me." Isabella stood up, pacing to the window. "We have to call the police." "No." Vincent's voice was sharp. "The police can't help with this." "This is my world, Isabella. This is what I tried to protect you from." Isabella turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. "Then what are we going to do?" "We?" Vincent shook his head. There is no we in this. I'm going to get Elena back, and you're going to stay here where it's safe. Absolutely not. Vincent crossed to her in 2 quick strides, gripping her shoulders. Isabella, listen to me. These people are killers. They won't hesitate to hurt you to get to me. I can't— His voice broke slightly. I can't lose you too. Isabella reached up to cup his face in her hands. You're not going to lose me. And you're not going to lose Elena. But you're not doing this alone. Isabella? No, Vincent. I know you think you have to carry everything by yourself, but you don't. Not anymore. Vincent stared into her eyes, seeing the love and determination there, and felt something shift inside him. For his entire adult life, he'd faced every challenge alone, trusted no one completely, relied only on his own strength and cunning. But Isabella was offering him something he'd never had, a true partner. What are you suggesting? He asked quietly. Isabella's mind was racing. The community center. Elena was there tonight, which means she was probably working late on the children's program. If the Torinos were watching her, they might not know about all the security cameras in the area. Vincent's eyes sharpened. You think we might have footage of the kidnapping? It's possible. And if we do, we might be able to figure out where they took her. Vincent pulled out his phone, dialing Marcus. Get to the community center. Check all the security cameras in a 6-block radius. I want to know everything about how they took Elena and where they went. As Vincent coordinated with his men, Isabella found herself thinking about Elena, kind, hopeful Elena who had dedicated her life to helping children, who had never hurt anyone. The thought of her in danger made Isabella's chest tight with fear and anger. Vincent, she said when he finished his call, there's something else. The children at the community center, some of them live in the warehouse district. They know every building, every hiding place. If the Torinos are holding Elena there, those kids might be able to help us find her. Vincent stared at Isabella with something approaching awe. You want to use children as reconnaissance? Not use them. Ask for their help. There's a difference. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks and benefits. Finally, he nodded. It's dangerous, but it might be our best chance. Over the next few hours, Vincent's penthouse became a war room. Marcus arrived with security footage that showed Elena being forced into a black van, along with a partial license plate number. Isabella contacted 3 of her older students who lived in the warehouse district, explaining that Elena was in trouble and they needed help finding her. Mr. Vincent, said Carlos, a 16-year-old with street smarts beyond his years, I know that area. There's an old textile warehouse on Pier Street that's been empty for months. Perfect place to hide someone. It's got multiple exits, added Maria, Carlos's younger sister, but also lots of places where someone could get trapped if they didn't know the layout. Vincent studied the building schematics that Marcus had obtained, his mind already formulating a plan. But every scenario he considered ended with the possibility of Elena getting hurt. There has to be another way, he muttered. Isabella moved to stand beside him, studying the plans. What if we give them what they want? What do you mean? They want you, right? They want to eliminate the competition. So we give them Vincent Romano. Vincent's blood ran cold. Absolutely not. Not the real you, Isabella said quickly. A decoy. Someone who looks enough like you from a distance to fool them long enough for your men to get Elena out. Vincent stared at her, his mind racing. It was risky, but it might work. Who would be the decoy? Marcus, Isabella said immediately. He's about your height and build. In the dark, wearing your usual suit and coat, he could pass for you. Marcus, who had been listening to the conversation, nodded grimly. I'll do it, boss. For Elena. Vincent felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, fear, and something else he couldn't quite name. These people were willing to risk their lives for his sister, for him. When had he stopped being alone? It's too dangerous, he said finally. Everything we do is dangerous, Isabella replied. But this is Elena we're talking about. She's worth the risk. Vincent looked around the room, at Marcus, loyal and brave. at the teenagers who were willing to help despite the danger, at Isabella, whose love had already changed his life in ways he was still discovering. For the first time in years, he wasn't facing a crisis alone. "All right," he said finally. "Here's what we're going to do." As they finalized their plan, Vincent pulled Isabella aside. "I need you to promise me something," he said, his voice intense. "If this goes wrong, if something happens to me, you get out of Chicago. You disappear, start over somewhere safe." Isabella shook her head. "Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me, Isabella." She looked into his eyes, seeing the fear there, not for himself, but for her. "I promise," she said softly. "But only if you promise me something too." "What?" "Promise me that after we get Elena back, you'll consider that maybe you don't have to live this life forever. That maybe there's another way." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "I promise to consider it," Isabella smiled, reaching up to kiss him gently. "That's all I ask." As dawn approached, Vincent's team prepared to move. The plan was complex and dangerous, with multiple moving parts that all had to work perfectly. But for the first time in his life, Vincent wasn't facing the darkness alone. He had Isabella's love, his men's loyalty, and Elena's faith in him. It would have to be enough. The war for his family and his soul was about to begin. The warehouse district was shrouded in fog as Vincent's team moved into position. It was 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the scheduled meeting with the Torinos. Vincent crouched behind a shipping container, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination he'd never experienced before. Through his earpiece, he could hear the steady voices of his men reporting their positions. Marcus was already in place, wearing Vincent's signature black coat and fedora, ready to play the role of decoy. Carlos and Maria had confirmed Elena's location, the old textile warehouse on Pier Street, just as they'd suspected. "Boss, thermal imaging shows 5 heat signatures in the building." Tony's voice crackled through the comm. "One smaller figure in the center room, that's got to be Elena." Vincent's jaw tightened. His sister was alive, but surrounded by armed men who wouldn't hesitate to kill her if the plan went wrong. "Isabella, you're sure about the building's layout?" Vincent asked quietly. Isabella's voice came through clearly from her position in the mobile command center they'd set up 3 blocks away. "Carlos walked me through it twice. There's a service entrance on the east side that leads directly to the room where they're holding Elena. But Vincent, you'll only have a few minutes once Marcus makes contact." Vincent closed his eyes, running through the plan one more time. Marcus would approach the main entrance, drawing the Torinos' attention while Vincent and Tony entered through the service door. They'd extract Elena while the Torinos were focused on the decoy. Simple in theory, potentially deadly in practice. "All units, sound off," Vincent commanded. One by one, his men confirmed their readiness. Vincent felt a surge of pride and gratitude. These men were risking their lives for his family, and he wouldn't let their loyalty be in vain. "Marcus, you don't have to do this," Vincent said into his comm. "Yes, I do, boss. Elena's like a sister to me, too." Vincent felt his throat tighten with emotion. "When this is over, we're going to have a long talk about the future of this organization. Looking forward to it, boss." At exactly midnight, Marcus emerged from the shadows and began walking toward the warehouse's main entrance. Vincent watched through binoculars as his friend and lieutenant approached what could very well be his death. The warehouse doors opened, and Vincent could see figures moving in the shadows. The Torinos had taken the bait. "Now," Vincent whispered. He and Tony moved swiftly toward the service entrance, their footsteps silent on the wet pavement. Vincent's mind was crystal clear, focused entirely on the mission ahead. But underneath the tactical planning, his heart was screaming with fear, not for himself, but for Elena, for Marcus, for Isabella waiting anxiously in the command center. The service door was unlocked, just as Carlos had promised. Vincent and Tony slipped inside, moving through the dark corridors with practiced stealth. Vincent could hear voices from the main area, Marcus engaging the Torinos in conversation, buying them precious time. They reached the room where Elena was being held. Through a crack in the door, Vincent could see his sister tied to a chair, her face bruised but her eyes alert and defiant. Two guards stood nearby, their attention focused on the commotion at the main entrance. Vincent signaled to Tony, and they moved as one. The guards went down silently, efficiently. Vincent was at Elena's side in seconds, cutting her bonds with a knife. "Vincent," Elena whispered, relief flooding her voice. "I knew you'd come. Can you walk?" Vincent asked, helping her to her feet. "I'm fine." "But Vincent, this is a trap. They knew you'd come for me." "There are more men." Elena's warning was cut off by the sound of gunfire from the main area. Marcus was in trouble. "Go," Vincent told Tony. "Get Elena out of here. Use the east exit. Boss, what about you?" "I'm not leaving Marcus." Vincent handed Elena over to Tony, then turned toward the sound of the gunfire. He could hear Isabella's voice in his earpiece, urgent and frightened. "Vincent, thermal imaging shows at least 8 men converging on Marcus's position. You need to get out of there. Not without Marcus." Vincent moved through the warehouse corridors, his gun drawn, his mind calculating angles and possibilities. He could hear the Torino leader shouting orders, could smell gunpowder and fear in the air. He reached the main area just as Marcus dove behind a stack of crates, bullets splintering the wood around him. The Torinos had him pinned down, and it was only a matter of time before they flanked his position. Vincent didn't hesitate. He opened fire, drawing the Torino's attention away from Marcus. In the chaos that followed, Vincent moved with deadly precision, years of experience guiding his actions. But there were too many of them, and they had the advantage of position. "Vincent, behind you," Marcus shouted. Vincent spun just as a Torino gunman emerged from the shadows. Time seemed to slow as Vincent saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger. This was it. After everything he'd survived, everything he'd built, he was going to die in a warehouse, leaving Isabella and Elena to mourn him. The shot rang out, but it wasn't Vincent who fell. Isabella stood in the doorway, a smoking gun in her hands, her face pale but determined. "Isabella, what the hell are you doing here?" Vincent shouted, even as he felt overwhelming relief that she was alive. "Saving your life," she replied, moving to his side. "Carlos showed me another way in." The remaining Torinos, seeing their leader dead and their position compromised, began to retreat. Within minutes, the warehouse was silent, except for the sound of sirens in the distance. Vincent pulled Isabella into his arms, his hands shaking as he held her. "You could have been killed." "So could you," she replied, her voice muffled against his chest. "I told you, you're not doing this alone anymore." Marcus approached them, grinning despite the blood on his face. "Boss, I think it's time for that talk about the future." Vincent looked around the warehouse, at the bodies of his enemies, at Marcus who had risked everything for loyalty, at Isabella who had literally saved his life. He thought about Elena, safe now thanks to the courage of people who loved him. He thought about the children at the community center, about Tommy's dreams of becoming an architect, about the possibility of a life beyond violence and fear. "You're right," Vincent said finally. "It is time." 6 months later. Vincent stood in the community center's main hall, watching Tommy explain his latest architectural design to a group of younger children. The boy's confidence had grown tremendously over the past months, especially since Vincent had begun mentoring him regularly. "Mr. Vincent," Tommy called out, "can you tell them about load-bearing walls?" Vincent smiled, moving to join the group. These teaching sessions had become the highlight of his week, a reminder of the good he could do when he chose light over darkness. The Romano family's transition away from illegal activities hadn't been easy. It had required careful negotiation, strategic alliances, and more than a few tense moments. But Vincent had discovered that his skills in organization, leadership, and strategic thinking translated well to legitimate business ventures. Romano Construction had become one of Chicago's most respected firms, specializing in affordable housing and community development projects. Vincent had used his knowledge of the city's underbelly to identify areas that needed investment and renewal, turning former sites of violence into places of hope. "Vincent," Isabella's voice called from across the room. She was setting up for an art exhibition, her movements graceful and purposeful. Even after all these months, the sight of her still took his breath away. "Excuse me, kids," Vincent said, ruffling Tommy's hair. "Keep working on those designs." He crossed to Isabella, who was hanging a painting created by one of her teenage students. The artwork depicted a city skyline at sunrise, full of possibility and hope. "It's beautiful," Vincent said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Maria painted it," Isabella said, leaning back against his chest. "She says it's what Chicago looks like when you believe in tomorrow." Vincent pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Smart girl." Isabella turned in his arms, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. "Speaking of tomorrow," Elena called. "She wants to know if we've set a date yet." Vincent's heart skipped a beat. He'd been carrying the engagement ring for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. But looking at Isabella now, surrounded by the art and hope and love that filled this place, he realized the perfect moment wasn't about location or timing. It was about being with the person who had changed his life. "Actually," Vincent said, dropping to one knee right there in the community center, "I was hoping we could talk about that." Isabella's hands flew to her mouth as Vincent pulled out a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Isabella Chen," Vincent said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "You saw light in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You believed I could be better when I had given up on the possibility. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved." Tears were streaming down Isabella's face as she listened to the man who had once been Chicago's most feared crime boss pour his heart out in a room full of children's artwork. "I know I'm not the man you probably dreamed of marrying," Vincent continued. "I know my past will always be part of our story, but I promise you this, every day for the rest of my life, I will choose to be the man you see in me. I will choose love over fear, hope over despair, light over darkness." Vincent's voice broke slightly as he asked the question that would determine his future. "Will you marry me?" Isabella dropped to her knees in front of him, cupping his face in her hands. "Vincent Romano, you are exactly the man I dreamed of marrying. Not despite your past, but because of how you've chosen to rise above it. Yes, I will marry you. Yes to all of it." The community center erupted in cheers as Vincent slipped the ring onto Isabella's finger. Tommy and the other children had gathered around them, clapping and laughing. Elena appeared from somewhere, tears of joy streaming down her face as she hugged her brother and soon-to-be sister-in-law. "I'm so proud of you," Elena whispered to Vincent. "Mom and Dad would be proud too." Vincent felt a peace settle over him that he'd never experienced before. For so many years, he'd believed that his father's legacy of violence was the only path available to him. But Isabella had shown him that he could honor his family in a different way, by protecting and nurturing instead of destroying, by building instead of tearing down. Marcus appeared at Vincent's side, grinning broadly. "So, boss, does this mean I get to plan a bachelor party?" Vincent laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Just remember, Marcus, we're legitimate businessmen now. No strip clubs, no illegal gambling, and definitely no kidnapping the groom." "You take all the fun out of everything," Marcus replied with mock disappointment. As the celebration continued around them, Vincent and Isabella found a quiet moment together near the window overlooking the city. "Are you sure about this?" Vincent asked, his arms around Isabella's waist. "Marrying me means you'll always be connected to my past. There will always be people who remember what I used to be." Isabella looked up at him, her green eyes shining with love and certainty. "Vincent, I fell in love with all of you. Your past, your present, and your future. I'm not marrying the man you used to be, and I'm not marrying some idealized version of who you might become. I'm marrying you, exactly as you are right now." Vincent kissed her then, soft and sweet, tasting the salt of happy tears on her lips. "Besides," Isabella added with a mischievous smile, "someone has to keep you in line. Make sure you don't backslide into your old autocratic ways." "Autocratic?" Vincent raised an eyebrow. "I prefer decisively leadership-oriented." Isabella laughed, the sound like music to his ears. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. 1 year later. The wedding was held in the community center's main hall, transformed with white flowers and soft lighting into something magical. It wasn't the grand cathedral affair that Vincent Romano's wedding might once have been, but it was perfect for Vincent and Isabella, intimate, meaningful, surrounded by the people who had supported their love story from the beginning. Tommy served as ring-bearer, his chest puffed out with pride at the important responsibility. Maria and the other art students had created beautiful decorations, turning the space into a gallery of hope and love. Elena stood as Isabella's maid of honor, while Marcus served as Vincent's best man. The guest list was small but significant: former enemies who had become allies, children whose lives Vincent had touched, community leaders who had watched his transformation with amazement and respect. As Vincent waited at the altar, watching Isabella walk down the aisle in a simple but elegant white dress, he thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 2 years ago, he had been a man without hope, convinced that violence and isolation were his only options. Now he was surrounded by love, about to marry the woman who had saved his soul. Isabella reached him, her smile radiant, her eyes shining with tears of joy. The officiant began the ceremony, but Vincent barely heard the words. He was lost in Isabella's eyes, in the promise of the future they would build together. Do you? Vincent Romano, take Isabella Chen to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live. I do, Vincent said, his voice strong and certain. Do you, Isabella Chen, take Vincent Romano to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live? I do, Isabella replied, her voice filled with love and joy. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Vincent cupped Isabella's face in his hands, looking into her eyes one more time as an unmarried man. I love you, Mrs. Romano. I love you too, Mr. Romano. Their kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and hope. The community center erupted in cheers and applause as Vincent and Isabella Romano began their new life together. 5 years later, Vincent stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Isabella rock their 6-month-old daughter, Sophia, to sleep. The baby had Isabella's green eyes and Vincent's dark hair, and she had already wrapped her father completely around her tiny finger. She's finally asleep, Isabella whispered, carefully placing Sophia in her crib. Vincent moved to his wife's side, wrapping his arms around her as they watched their daughter sleep peacefully. The nursery was painted in soft yellows and greens, with artwork from Isabella's students decorating the walls. Tommy's design for the new community center is incredible, Isabella said quietly. He's going to be an amazing architect. Vincent smiled with pride. Tommy was now 16 and had been accepted to a prestigious architecture program with a full scholarship, partially funded by the Romano Foundation, the charitable organization Vincent and Isabella had established. He's got natural talent, Vincent replied. But more than that, he's got heart. Just like someone else I know. Isabella turned in his arms, her face glowing with contentment. Are you happy, Vincent? Really happy? Vincent looked around the nursery, at the evidence of the life they'd built together, at the sleeping child who represented their future, at the woman who had saved him from himself. I never knew happiness like this was possible, he said honestly. You gave me everything, Isabella. A family, a purpose, a reason to be better than I ever thought I could be. Isabella reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the lines that had softened over the years. We gave each other everything. Vincent kissed her forehead, then her lips, tasting the sweetness of a love that had conquered darkness and fear. Outside their window, Chicago sparkled in the night, a city of possibilities and second chances. Vincent Romano had once ruled through fear, but now he led through love. He had traded an empire built on violence for a legacy built on hope. And as he held his wife and watched his daughter sleep, Vincent knew that he had made the right choice. Love had indeed conquered all: his past, his fears, and his belief that he was beyond redemption. The Mafia king, who had never believed in love, had discovered that love was the most powerful force of all. And in Isabella's arms, surrounded by the family they had created and the community they served, Vincent Romano had found his happily ever after. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of love, redemption, and second chances. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that will touch your heart and remind you that it's never too late to choose love over fear. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. And let us know in the comments which part of Vincent and Isabella's story moved you the most. This story reminds us that no matter how dark our past may be, love has the power to transform us, heal us, and give us the strength to become the person we were always meant to be. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are born from the most unexpected places, and the greatest redemption comes through the eyes of someone who sees our potential when we can't see it ourselves.